You know, billions and billions of dollars, if you were just into this for money, you'd take the money and go someplace else. Obviously, this accumulation of Putin's is really related to power and continuing and maintaining power. And obviously, what you get from this committee and the discussion that we're having today is that sanctions on Russia do not necessarily curb behavior when someone is accumulating enough power that he can, in fact, continue to behave with impunity on the world stage in ways that all of us should find reprehensible, including the absolute brazen attacks on our electoral system. And so we continue to be concerned about the amount of accumulated power that this Putin has, especially given that he has made this seemingly in the interest of the Russian people. Makes this really complicated on how you deal with changing behavior. One thing I want to address, and so kind of that's our challenge here, and you hear it from almost every person who has raised these issues. There's two things I want to talk about. Number one is this sense that if we cooperate with Russia, if we turn the page and have a different relationship with Russia, Russia will in fact be on the same page in the fight against ISIS. You know, that was one of the theories, expressed theories of this administration going forward. I'd like to hear your comments on whether you think that's a wise course, even assuming that we have the same interest as it relates to ISIS.
Do you mind if I take that first? So putting aside whether or not Russia would be a good partner in the fight against ISIS, which I know there's a lot of debate about, I still think it would be a mistake to trade sanctions for cooperation in the fight against ISIS, in large part because that would signal to Russia, for example, if we said, well, you know what, we're going to drop sanctions against Crimea that we've imposed, it would signal to Russia that they can go ahead and continue their types of destabilizing activities in Eastern Europe. And it would also signal, frankly, to the rest of the world that principles of international law, such as sovereignty, are not as important to the United States as are other potential norms.
If I could add to that, I think it's important to bear in mind that the bilateral relationship we're talking about, the U.S. and Russia, is very broad. It, of course, includes a variety of different files, even in just the security domain and security interest domain. It is completely feasible to envision a relationship with Russia that may involve some element of cooperation or coordination in perhaps the Syria file, where there could be some kind of transactional politics and agreement, and simultaneously envisioning in the, for example, Ukraine file, a maintenance of current sanctions and a relationship of pressure. That has been the case with Russia, where we've seen in the last administration, for example, the amplification of Russia sanctions while seeing simultaneously coordination with Russia on the Iran file to remove sanctions. I think that principle of seeing a variegated relationship is one we should hold forefront.
We've spent a lot of time talking about the EU. We haven't looked much into Asia and the relationship that Putin has with China, that Russia has with China, and certainly the opportunity that he sees right now with the Arctic opening up and the challenges that we have in the Arctic. I'd like just a quick, I only have about a minute left, but anyone who feels comfortable talking about how we need to engage with China in this discussion, and also what opening up the Arctic has meant to his potential expansion on energy.
Speaking to the Russia-China relationship, this is one which has been, I think, aptly characterized, in which Russia is the junior partner to China, which has been very aggressive with Russia in its demands, contractual demands for energy, for example, and it has not, as some feared it might, been the backfill for European and U.S. sanctions, providing lots of capital where it was not available from the U.S. and the EU.
We want China to continue to drive really hard bargains.
And for that reason, this administration and Congress, I think, should set a tone of communication with China rather than antagonism in order for China to continue to set those hard bargains.
I'm out of time, and I want to respect the chairman's desire that this move along, but I did want to maybe follow up with you on the Arctic question. I think it's critical.
Thank you,
Can
Senator.
I just give a quick answer on that one? I think the ability of the Russian energy companies to take advantage of the Arctic has already been being severely limited by the existing SSI sanctions, because that's precisely the technology that's being restricted.